Hi, this is Leonard Kish with HealthIT.tv. I'm here with Dave Shaver, the CTO and founder of Corepoint Health. You've been doing Q&As on FHIR, that's FHIR. Tell me, what are the most common actually, first give me the 1 minute version of FHIR. What is FHIR and why is it so big at HIMSS this year? People have been talking about it for 3 or 4 years now, but now it seems like it's really mainstream and people are really, really excited about it.
Yeah, I think mainstream is a key part of what's happened with FHIR. Is that it's a lot more people are being interested in it and talking about it. And I think to your point of misconceptions, there's a lot of thoughts about it, what it might do. We've been doing a whiteboard sessions here at HIMSS, kind of doing very informal sessions that allow for a lot of Q&A. So they really diverge in terms of what people are interested in. In my day job, I'm the CTO of Corepoint. In my night job, as we like to call it, at HL7, I'm the co-chair of the FHIR Governance Board and co-chair of the Infrastructure and Messaging Committee. So really involved in the community. I think the community has really come together to build a great standard. And I'd like to spend a few minutes kind of setting the context, if I can draw a picture quick.
Sure.
I think the first question that everybody asks is, will HL7 be replaced? And as a reminder, if you imagine that you've got an EMR over here, be it Athena or be it Epic or anybody else, and you've got an ancillary system downstream, it could be a laboratory information system, for example. In the end, both of these begin with a database in the back end. And when we say we're going to replace HL7, no more than HL7 CCD or HL7 FHIR, neither one of these is going to replace HL7 version 2. But version 2 will continue to be used, right? We map from the database content into HL7 standard v2, and then we send that to our trading partner, who then puts it in his database. So we have an opportunity in HL7 v2 to exchange transactions. And where FHIR really is going to fit is we can imagine another API on the side of these applications that will map into a different format. So very similar to maybe the way that the EMR might send charges out, right? There'd be another module for charges, there'd be another module for pharmacy interaction, where there'd be X12 and NCPDP being sent out. We can imagine another way in which these vendors would author up the data in their database. And the distinction here is that while HL7 v2 and X12 and NCPDP are typically push, FHIR is much more interactive and much more service-oriented, so that as a user of a FHIR-enabled application, I have the ability to query and interact with one or more applications in real time. So the big distinction in FHIR is the fact that we're able to talk to the data at its source of truth. And that's similar to a transaction, right? I admit somebody into the registration system, and we send that down to the lab. It's the source of truth, but it's at the leisure and in the workflow when this transaction is available. Whereas in FHIR, I can go to the same source of truth, but ask it a question in an ad hoc timing kind of way. The misconception part is, well, this is really cool. Right now that I've got a way to get my fingers into the database, it means I can extract arbitrary data. And very similar to the HL7 v2 interface, I used to always say that everybody's looking for the magic wand, right? HL7 is this thing I run around and I'm able to point it at databases or point it at applications and extract data. And I say HL7 isn't so much a magic wand as it is a short stick you can run around and beat things with. So we have a slightly different stick and different ways in which to pull data out. And it allows us, with a capabilities-based API, to say, I support these particular resources. So there's about 120 resources available in FHIR. That's what the R in FHIR stands for, is resources. And we're interested in supporting a subset of those. The lab may support a different subset as compared to the EMR, as compared to my ancillary application.
So which of those are going to be implemented first, do you think? Are they kind of prioritized, or?
I think implementation's great, right? We in the HL7 environment, just to give context on the standard, we're going through this process called draft standard for trial use. And we've gone through phase 1 and phase 2 of this. Along the way, we've dropped the D, so it's just now called the standard for trial use. And we're going to get to a version 3 of this, and then this is going to go to the normative edition and allow us to call it final, right?
Right.
And I think the part that's going to be implemented first is really the greenfield opportunities. So lots of examples we could use where we have a capabilities-based API on the side of the lab. What could we imagine we could do that we couldn't do through HL7?
Right.
The other part of this that I haven't talked about is the Johns Hopkins guys have been working on a framework for smart apps, and smart apps allow a constrained access to some part of the data through FHIR into the patient context effectively that I'm working on.
Okay.
So it's lots of cool examples. If you just search for smart app gallery on the internet, you'll see that there's about 40 of these different apps, from pain management application, rheumatology, growth chart, and that kind of thing. So there's already a lot of very strong interest in these little point applications that need just a little bit of data out of an EMR and are kind of hosted in the context of that EMR.
Great. And one last question. People always talk about functional interoperability when we talk about FHIR. Can you comment on what people mean by functional interoperability and how that plays into how things are going to be different under a FHIR environment?
That's a good question, Leonard. I think I would break it into what I call syntactic interoperability and semantic interoperability. And we could take it one step further and maybe twist your word into maybe workflow-oriented interoperability. So those are kind of all those three things that syntactic interoperability is. We both know how the HL7 v2 message is structured, where the pipes go, where the carrots go, what it means to be a patient name. And semantic interoperability is deeper, right? It's the concept of I know what gender really means. I know what it means to be on a blood thinner. I know what it means to be obese or not, right? Those types of attributes that would be semantically oriented, and that involves, a lot of vocabulary and terminology. So we all agree that this is the one way to do things, which is the difficult part in healthcare. So I always like to say that any standards organization has the problem that if we could get the users to agree on how they're going to accomplish something, right? Get the pediatricians to agree this is the way they want to do healthcare, and the guys in long-term care for seniors are nodding and saying we're going to do it exactly the same way, and then everybody in between can all agree how we're going to accomplish this, then we can have a single standard and a single vocabulary for semantic interoperability. As long as we have differing opinions about, we're special, we're different, we're unique, it's difficult to get the data to move semantically. I think FHIR, the big difference, as I mentioned, is that FHIR really helps with the workflow piece. That an HL7 v2 message is about I admit a patient, I transfer a patient, I update a patient, and that's the moment at which a piece of data flows across the interface. And FHIR is about I have a patient query API. And these are the pieces I support, right? I might only support read-only, which is kind of the context for Project Argonaut and the smart apps. And ultimately, I may support update and delete and so on. And these are the resources I support. You can build around that. So that's really, I think, how workflow is impacted if we think about that interoperability.
Yeah, it's a little easier to modify it to how you do the things you do in your environment.
It's somewhat similar to the concept of perform procedure steps in DICOM, that we have a way to expose different steps in a process, and we have a workflow resource process we're trying to go through internally to say this is another way that FHIR could be used, is to either expose an existing workflow that's going on inside an EMR or radiology application, or to run that externally, right, more as a workflow engine. Yeah.
Great. Well, great. Thanks so much. It's been a great introduction. Best of luck with FHIR this year. Thanks for talking with us.
Thank you, Leonard.
This is Leonard Kish with HealthIT.tv with Dave Shaver at HIMSS 16. Thank you.